G'day everyone. Today, I just thought I'd show you how to make a custom chart with Bestdori's custom chart creator. This was released just recently, this week, and there's quite a few charts already that have been made, but there are a couple of issues with having the maps synced correctly that I've noticed a lot of people do, and a lot of people have just chosen not to make a map in the first place because they couldn't figure out exactly what to do. And so today, hopefully, I'm going to show you how to use the tools and as well how to get your song actually synced, because that's the biggest problem people have seen. So you hit this publish a post button and you'll be taken to this screen. This is where you can obviously pick what song you'd like to do. And you have four types, I guess. There's custom, which is the one I usually use. It lets you upload your own music. You can do Bang Dream, which, you can just choose from a song that's already in the game. You can map your own version of it, and you don't have to deal with any sync issues because they're already, ready for the game. Love Life's Collider Festival, very similarly, it'll just provide you with the audio, so that's easy. And with OS, this will just search beat maps from OS, and it'll import the music from there. But let's go with custom. We're going to upload the audio URL, and we'll select a file. This is the one I've chosen. It's Don't Worry from Xenoblade Chronicles, but a cover in the black and white Pokemon DS sound font. I'll link to that in the description. And basically, the idea is, I don't know anything about this song, so we're going to learn what we need to know and what you would need to learn if you were trying to map a song. And then we're going to map it. And we're going to deal with the sync issues that would happen. Again, I don't know the solution to it yet because I haven't mapped this, but I know the method to solve it. So we'll be able to do that. Alright, and now that the file is finished uploading, sorry, I have a little bit of a slow internet here in Australia. We can go get the cover URL, and this is simply the album art. We're going to use the actual album art from the album that it was released on. And that should be cool. Alright, and the album art was actually even bigger than the song somehow. That's how high resolution it was. And so, now that we've got these two uploaded in just a moment, the Bestdori API links will be here in their place, and that means that you know that they're actually, that you won't be able to tell, obviously the name is just nonsense, but that's a good way to do it. We can confirm our album art will show up here. We can put in our title of our song. In this case, it is Don't Worry. I'm going to put black and white there because it is, of course, the Pokemon black and white version. And the artists, I'm going to write Sir Spacebar because that's who it was credited to, even if he might go by a different name nowadays. The difficulty, obviously, this is up to you. I think most people like to make expert maps, but as for the difficulty, I have no idea how this is going to turn out because I usually like to map to what the song is, rather than trying to go for a specific difficulty. So let's just throw it all the way down to 7. It's not going to end up like that, but we'll start it like that anyway. And so now here we are in the editor. You can get that by hitting chart, and there's a bunch of tools we can use. However, if I just start trying to add notes, you'll notice we actually can't because we have to add a BPM marker first. This is the notes tool right here, and we get a little X symbol. So, we need to figure out what the BPM is. And for that, we've got this tab that I've had open the whole time in the video. And this is just a simple tap tool. You'll be able to tap along to whatever song. You don't even have to have a song, but we're going to be tapping along to a song. And it'll tell you the BPM. So, let me open the music file. And then we're going to start tapping along to the beat once we think we've got it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so we're just going to tap along to this until we're satisfied that we've got a pretty accurate BPM. It looks like it's going to end up at about 121. But ideally, you want to tap until the top average BPM isn't jumping around so much. And it's already pretty stable for now, so we can be pretty sure it's 121, unless I've tapped an extra time. But the nearest hole as well shouldn't be changing. Some songs change BPM, so you would need to measure this more than once. But we shouldn't have to do that. We can be pretty sure that that's correct. So now that we've got 121, I'm going to close this. We don't need it anymore. And we're going to change BPM to 121. Now, as soon as we put our first thing we're actually at the very top of the map. Let me scroll all the way down. when we put our first BPM marker in, it's going to instantly jump to the very bottom of the map at 0 seconds, 0 everything. And the problem with that is that the very first beat of the map in the audio isn't necessarily going to align with one of these. These are the end of bar markers. And so if we press R to hit the play tool, let me just, for a second, let's see where the first beat lies. It's about here, but let's say we added a BPM marker here, right? And then let's add some notes. Let's see if that syncs up just for the moment. Okay, not even really, but the biggest problem that we have is that even if this were on beat, it isn't going to be registered as on beat. Because you see, these are the offbeat colors in this skin. These are the notes that are considered on beat, but because we started this section off beat, it's going to pretend it's always off beat. So first of all, there are two solutions to this, and I'm going to show you both of them. One is, I think, probably better, and I think you should use this if you can, but the second is useful if you can't edit the audio track that you have, or if you hit the Bestdori API limit on uploading tracks. So we're going to show you both of those now. And so here we are in Audacity, and this is a free program, you've probably heard of it. It's not very good for actual audio editing, but what we're doing is very simple, basically. So what you want to do here is, I've downloaded a metronome from searching on YouTube for 121 BPM metronome. I did confirm that this is the actual BPM of the song as we tapped out. And so basically, remember that our BPM marker in Bestdori will always start basically right here, right? It's going to put the BPM marker at 0, 0. So here we have now, this is what Bestdori's BPM is basically going to sync to. And so if we want the song to be synced to Bestdori's BPM, we should sync the song to its BPM. And so what we've got here is, let me also, generate some silence at the start so that it actually goes there. And this, now you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. This should be synced because this is going to be beat 1, you can listen to it. Actually, is it beat 1? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you can see, so that's actually synced. And what we then want to do is just get rid of the BPM of the metronome, because we don't want that audio exported, and it's also half an hour long. So get rid of it, and then we're simply going to File, Export Audio, and then we'll call it Don't Worry, but Synced this time. Obviously, you don't have to name your MP3 files whatever you'd like. But we're going to now use this. We'll close Audacity, not save the changes because I don't feel like I need them. And we'll go to here, and then back at our audio URL, let's select the synced one, and then let's see how it handles. Alright, and with that uploaded, we're now going to go into the chart, and we're going to see if the audio that we, inserted is actually now synced. So let's make sure we scroll down to the bottom, because of course, this is a 4-minute track. I'm probably not going to actually map all of it, but for demonstration purposes, that doesn't matter. So let's now play from the very start. Remember, we put a metronome tick here when we were editing it, so it should show up correctly. I'm not sure if that showed up quite on this track, but again, what I like to do is simply put some notes down, and then we'll be able to listen to them and see if it is actually synced. Okay, so you can see that that's obviously not synced. These notes are coming in after the music is, and we can listen to it again. Yeah, the notes are late. And so we have two solutions, which is either we can go back to Audacity and we can move the music later, or what we can do is the second solution, and this will work probably fine for now. So what we actually want to do is we want to move the notes earlier. what I've done here is I've added a correct BPM marker to where the song will start. But, and this is a little complicated, but we want to change the BPM of this first section so that one of these, beat markers at the end of a bar will sync up to where the song starts. Because remember earlier, when we placed our BPM marker here, the notes that appeared on beat were actually offbeat colored, and the notes that appeared offbeat were on-beat colored. I don't know if I said the same thing twice there. But the point is, you want your actual BPM beginning to sync up with the end of a bar or a beat. It doesn't need to be a bar, but any one of the beats will work. And so, to do that, we're going to move this beat marker, we're going to try to move it down to where the song starts, which is somewhere in this area. To do that, we're going to make a higher BPM section at the very beginning. So let's just scroll down right here and make this, say, 123. I don't know if that's going to be synced, but now you will have noticed these notes moved down. And so if we take a look, it's almost correct, but it does need a little bit more tweaking. So let's once again change the BPM. You'll notice the notes came down more, and let's play to see. That sounded much better to me. And to always preview accurately, I like to use the simulator. The reason I do this is because if I play from here, it basically doesn't always sync up. This seems to be doing well, and it does seem to do that when there's not too many notes. But later on down the track, you'll probably notice a lot that if you just try to play like this, it will actually be, it won't be synced with how the song is synced. But the simulator is always accurate. Here's the chart, here's the simulator. So if you hit play from here, this is what people will be watching. So make sure it's synced to this. It seems like it could do just a little bit better, It's mostly synced, and I think if I posted it like that, people wouldn't mind. But it's always good to be as accurate as possible when doing these, because, you're going to put in a lot of hours to making a good map. It might as well be correct. And see, I think that's perfect now. And so that is basically that's how to sync your tracks, and that's what most people have trouble with. If you ever see a weird BPM section at the start of a map, that is why. If you do want to just edit your audio with Audacity or whatever other program, that's completely fine, and I think it is a better solution because you don't have to have a weird artifact of, within the map. But, again, if you do try to edit it like that, you'll spend a long time uploading. As you saw, my uploads took a while. I had to cut them out because they took so long. And also, if you try to upload too much, Bestdori will hit you with a please stop uploading, you're hurting our API. And so, this is a good solution. I think doing them in tandem, basically as we did, is a great way to do it. On one of my older maps, I had to have a 568 BPM section because of how tedious it was at the very beginning. And you don't want to see that in the thing. If ever they made these into a real Bandora, you would see the chibis in the background, and those sway to the BPM of the music. So if you have a drastically different BPM section just to sync it up, that would reflect. And Burrito, the person in charge of creating this tool, has said that they might want to import that, sometime in the future. So as far as I'm concerned, it's probably best to keep BPM differences to a minimum. But if you don't care about that too much, you can just use this from the get-go. And a good way to figure it out, what we did was we just trial and errored because we knew it was very close. So we changed the BPM from 121 just very slightly. But you can also do this with maths. If you know, for example, that it would end up here, would be the start of the map, you can see that in terms of the sections we have, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And so you want this to be 8, but it's actually 11. And so you would do 8 divided by 11, and then you would multiply that by the BPM of the start, and then make that the new BPM, and then this marker would sync up to here. And if you get a decimal, what you would have to do is multiply that by 2, 3, 4, or whatever gets you to a whole number, and then instead of placing it at the end of the second bar, you would place it at the end of the fourth bar. I know that's a lot to take in, but that is how you have to do it, and that is the reason that a lot of charts aren't synced, is because that's so complicated. Again, let's open up to my first real chart and also my first actual chart, and I'll demonstrate that in this chart, there is a 266 BPM section, and then immediately a 100 BPM section, which is the actual, how the map goes. And so you should try to avoid having to do something like that, but I just used the original audio. I didn't edit this at all. And then for this map, originally this was the 568 BPM, but I decided that looked bad. So you can see I changed it to, what I did was I edited the audio file just like we did, and then I modified it a tiny little bit, so now it's 131 BPM leading into 128. So I think combining those two features, audio editing and then BPM, kind of, just editing a little bit, that's probably the best way that you're going to be able to do that. So now let's finally get into the rest of the tools. You can see up here there's a bar of 6 tools. The first one is the play tool. This is, hotkey R. Yeah, it has 2 options, follow and not follow. If you don't follow, you can see that it just does that. If you tick follow, it follows along with you, and it scrolls the chart. Click anywhere again to pause. A lot of people asked, how do I pause? Guys, what do I do? You just click again. There's not really that many options, but you do have to have the play tool equipped. So if you play and then you switch to another tool because you want to add notes, like, let me add some notes, you're going to have to switch back to the play tool. And again, that's learning these hotkeys is very good. If you're on mobile, consider switching to a PC. That's really all I have to say. I've never really respected mobile as a tool for serious editing. You're probably going to have to accept the drawbacks that come with it. So the next little box here is the plus. It is the add tool, add elements to the chart. And again, you've got 4 choices here. The first one is note, and as you've seen, you can add notes anywhere. They will automatically snap to the grid that you have selected, and that's pretty good. This is going to be what you're using the most, is the add note tool. And then you have 2 types of sliders here. Oh, by the way, note is F, is the hotkey. And then S and D are your hotkeys for sliders. Now you have 2 types of slides, slide A and slide B. And the reason you have those is because sometimes you want to have 2 sliders at once, and you want to have them not interfere with one another. So as you can see, we've just made 2 sliders. This one is an S slider, and this one is a D slider in terms of hotkeys, which is a slider A and a slide B in terms of what they actually call them. And so that's really cool. Let's say you only had a slide type A. So let me try to make like a map. Here's my incredible thing. And by the way, you'll notice the first time you put a slide down, it'll be the head of a slider. Subsequently, if it can link up, it will be ticks. And then you want to click on a tick again to toggle it to the end of a slider. I think most people figured this out. There wasn't one map that I saw that really didn't understand that. But now, again, if I try to put, let's say I wanted you to hold this with your left hand, and then with your right hand, I want you to, have another slider. If I try to do that, it's just going to start placing ticks down, and then you're going to get some jank like this. And that's because, again, it can link up, so it will. Instead, you want to put slide B, and that way it won't interrupt any of that. And again, we're going to click it again on the end to do that. So that's what slide A and slide B are for. This isn't synced up to any kind of music at all, but obviously you would try to do that. I'll make some actual mapping in a second. For now, we'll just cover the tools. And then with the hotkey A, this is the BPM marker that we talked about at the start. For the most part, you won't need this more than once. Once you've got the start set up, most songs have 1 BPM forever. But that's not always the case. There are songs that change BPM halfway through. And if you are trying to do one of those, then you will need to use this. For example, a map that I'm pretty sure somebody will make is Brain Power, and that changes from 170 to 173 BPM. It's hardly noticeable, and you probably didn't even know that it changed BPMs if you'd only ever listened to it. But when you're map making, this could drive you insane, and you'd be like, why isn't it synced up all of a sudden? And so what you want to do is you want to actually use BPM markers to change the BPM. And that's, again, it's very simple. You just click and, do that. I don't recommend what we've done here and place it not on a beat, because then this happens, and as you've seen already, the chart builder doesn't know that these are actually on beat now, even if it was. Anyway, I'll erase those really quickly. The next is this tool, the pencil. And you've got two tools in here. W and Q are your hotkeys. W will turn notes into flicks. So you just tap on it and it becomes a flick. Tap on it again to enable, or to reset it rather. You can set the end of sliders to it. Can you set the start of sliders to it? No, you cannot. Can you set slider text to it? No, you cannot. That's very reasonable and is how the game works. So, put as many flicks as you want in your map. The second hotkey, Q, is the skill note. So this will trigger a skill. Bestdori maps have 6 skill triggers. A lot of people might forget and only do 5, but there is an encore skill. So if you want to make your map realistic, you would put 6 of these skill triggers, hopefully spaced out evenly throughout your map. And you can see if I click on it, it'll become this. If I click off it again, it'll go back to a regular note. And you can put as many of these as you want. I wouldn't, if you're making like a gimmick map, maybe you would put a bunch of skill triggers, but it doesn't seem like the best idea. The other thing to note about skill notes and flick notes is that, let's say I make this a flick note. You can see it's a regular note right now. Now it's a flick note. If I try to make it a skill note, you'll notice that nothing changes visually, but if I unflick notify it, it is now a skill note. So it actually is both. It can be both. And if I do this, if I make it both, and then I preview the chart, you'll notice now, this is the note right here, it actually isn't counted as a skill note. If it was counted as a skill note, it would look like this on the chart, and you would have this big yellow section to show what it covers. So, under the hood, quote unquote, it is a skill note, but only when it's not a flick note. It can't be both, but it will keep both properties, and that's a very weird thing to have. And again, you can make anything a skill note. So just keep that in mind. Try not to make your notes both types. But other than that, it's fine. Can you make a skill on a slider tick? You shouldn't be able to. It doesn't look like it's going to accept that. So that's very good. Now, next is the eraser tool. That's E. We've been using it the whole time, and it's very straightforward. You simply click on something to erase it. You can put it back. Again, learn the hotkeys. It's much easier than going up to this section all the time. And so again, most useful hotkeys, in my opinion, are R to play the map, F to put notes down, and E to erase notes. S and D are your sliders. And then, W is your flicks, which you shouldn't necessarily need. The next tool, the ruler, is what you're going to do to set how frequently these lines appear to help you. Now, 1/4 is the most reasonable. You're probably only going to need 1/4. And if I try to make an actual map out of this, you'll see that most of the notes do fall on 1/4, which means, quarter spaces between these. However, some maps might require, more intense note triggers. And again, the hotkeys for these are just 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, and then 9 and 0 for the 12th and the 16th. If you need 1/8, this is mostly for, say, drum rolls. If you have a particularly intense section of a map. 1/1, I mean, why would you ever do it? You can only ever get, 1 beat apart. It's just not that good. 1/4 is where you're going to want to stay. But if you do find that you need more intense, you can drop it to 1/8. 1/6 is very strange. I don't actually know of anything that is written that way. But if you do need it, it's there. The only other thing I have to say about this is, let's say you do put a 1/6 on and then you put a note down. Let's just put, let's fill up the board with notes here. And then I change it back to 1/4. You'll notice the spacing does stay on these. So you can kind of see that these aren't synced up to any particular lines. And that's important to note. So if you have a section that wants 1/6 or 1/8 or whatever, feel free to switch to it to place the notes, but then you can switch back afterwards and it'll keep those there. The final tab is the import, export, restart. I mean, that's very simple. You hit export. It gives you this copy-pastable list of all the notes, basically. And so if I copy this, I import it. I hit tick and it goes ding, and then I would hit confirm and it would give me this map. And so if I pasted this, for example, this export, if I pasted that into the description, you could recreate this map. However, it doesn't copy anything on this info tab. It only copies the chart. So you would still need the audio, you would need the cover, you would need all of that kind of stuff. And that's basically all the tools that we have. The final tab is preview, of course. This shows the chart. This is the simulator, which we've already seen. And of course, with the settings, you can change the lane design and stuff. This is more accurate to how I play in-game. I use this lane setting because I think it looks nicer, more minimalistic. But the reason I don't use it in the editor is because you can't see anything. It's very unfortunate, but there are in fact no lines. Yeah, you might notice that. There's no lines across that are visible. Whereas on this one, even though there's no lines in the real map, you can actually see them. And I'm not sure why that is. I think maybe it chooses the color of the border to do that, and, Lane Design 3 doesn't have one. So either way, I like to design in Lane Design too. But that's how to use the map, and so that's how to use the tools in the chart creator. Hopefully you'll be able to get a pretty good understanding of that, but let's actually do, just very quickly, let's actually map a section of the song, because so far we've only used it to kind of show, how it works. But what I'm going to do here is, this is the process I usually use, is I listen to it, and it kind of goes like, do-do-do-do-do-do. And so what I want to do is I just simulate the rhythm with notes down the center lane, is what I do first. Okay, and so then there's a note here, and maybe is it there or there? I'm not really sure. Let me see if Hiroyuki Sawano is brave enough to put a note on the third. Okay, well there you go. It's actually half, and so let's leave it at just that for the moment. Now, if we go play it from the start, these should all be synced up. There you go. So ting 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 ting. And so now that I have these, I know the timings, and this is where I would start to choose an actual map. And so this is the hardest part for me, is, what do I want to map? How do I want to put the notes so that you actually play them? And there's a lot of advanced things to consider. There's a lot of basic things to consider. The number one thing is just to make sure that it's fun to play. But, there's a lot of other things as well. For example, if you put a slider in the center lane and it curves off like this maybe, what you really, really don't want to do is something like this. If you have a pattern like this, for example, that's really bad. Because if you have a slider in the center lane, it's ambiguous as to which finger you're supposed to hit it with, or which hand. But the default, thing people will do is, if it curves off to the right, they'll hit it with their right hand because they assume it's going to stay there. If it curves off to the left, they'll hit it with their left hand. And so if you want to signal to people to hit a slider in the center lane with a particular hand, I recommend putting a slope on it of at least, as you can see, in 4 things, like at 1/4 an entire beat. It goes over by 2 lanes. And if it's any shallower than that, like for example, if I do this is shallower. It only goes over 2 lanes in 1.5 beats. And that's, it's a little too shallow. I would recommend, apparently I used D for that. I would recommend doing at least that steep, and that way you can read it easier. But in terms of actually mapping this, why don't we try to figure out an actual map? I'll get back to you once I've figured it out. Alright, so I've gone ahead and made a, very simple track. You can see these are where we had the notes earlier. The ting, 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 ting. And what I've done is I've put a slider just here, very simple. And that way it's a little more interesting to play. I can, again, use the play tool to just... And that's all we have. And again, simulator, you can check how it's going. This is what it would look like in a real game. And I think that looks completely fine. It's maybe not how I would open a map if I was actually going to map a 4-minute song, but that should give you the general idea. And so, again, if we wanted to recreate this pattern, all I would simply do is, again, it starts on the second beats, so it's a little interesting. But let me print screen this and get it up in another window so I can recreate it. So you would start here, put the note down, using F. And then I had another note here. I actually had this one in this column. Oh no, I've already stuffed it all up. So using F, I had these two notes. Using S, I had this, and this is where the head is. And then I had a slider tick. I had another one up here, and then, again, you can just leave that while you're actually creating the map. So I had a flick here, place a note with F, change it into a flick with W, and then I had more notes here and here. The slider went over to the center, and then went back up to lane 2, using 2 clicks to turn it into a slider tail, and then finally another one. And this is the same pattern that we just have. So, obviously this isn't synced up to any kind of music because we just put it there, but the pattern is identical, and that's how you would build it. And again, if you wanted to put a skill, like, let's say it was an important part, it's been long enough, you just hit Q to do that. And that's how you would generally try to map. If there are any more advanced techniques, let me think of some. So something you might have to consider sometimes is hand balance. So for example, something you might see in a lot of maps is a pattern like this, where you simply have to, you all know, you're tapping with your left hand every beat, I don't know, half beat. And on your other hand, you're doing this. If you have too many of these and you don't switch it up, it's an unbalanced map and it's not as fun to play. Your left hand will get more tired, obviously. And I think everybody knows this, but, it's a good to occasionally just switch back and do it with your other hand. And more often than not, what you'll actually see in Bestdori maps is something like this, where it alternates every time, and that is a lot more fun to play. Finally, all I wanted to say is test your map by actually trying to play it. So what I do is I have an iPhone XR, and that has a guided access feature, which lets me disable touch entirely on my phone. And then what I do is I play through in the simulator like this, holding my phone with touch entirely disabled, and then I simply try to play it as if I was, reading the map. And so I would do that pattern, and I would say, oh, did that feel good to play? And I would say yes, I would say no. That felt a lot more like a flick, for example. And then you would put a flick there. If it felt a lot, just bad, you would change it. A lot of the time I would be unsure, like, is this pattern good? And then I would play it and I'd go, yeah, that's fine. That flows really well. So the number one thing you just want to make sure is that your map flows well. Test it a lot. Again, I watch the simulator more times than I care to admit when making a map. So for sure, hopefully that helped. Again, the BPM thing is the biggest thing to keep in mind. Make sure your map is synced, because a lot of maps aren't synced, and that's the number one thing that is the problem. There's been a lot of what would be really good maps, but they're simply not correct. And so you can't really say that that's a good map. But now that you know how to use all the tools effectively, you should be able to do it. Again, learn the hotkeys, and you'll probably be on your way. Just remember, though, that a good map is either a short map or a map you spend a long time on. It's, if you want to make a good map that is full length, it's going to take you some time. It might take hours and hours. I know it does for a lot of people. The reason that the first map I published was my, Fortnite default dance is because I wanted to make a good map. I didn't want to make a bad map, but I also wanted to be quick. And to do that, I definitely couldn't have made a full map. So if you do want to make a full map, if you want to make a 1.5 minute, 2-minute map, which is where a lot of songs end up, you will need to spend a few hours. If you're trying to make a full, again, 4-minute map, that's going to take a very long time. So I wouldn't recommend it in general, but that is there. And also, something I didn't even mention is that at the top of the screen, you can see the time and the note count at the top of the screen. This will also display on your cursor here. except this one doesn't show decimals. And then at the bottom of the screen again, you can say like, this is the 5-second mark. There are 12 notes at this point, and as we tick up, you'll be able to follow along with my cursor and see that the note count rises. It's the total like combo count at that point. And then at the top of the screen displays as well. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hopefully this wasn't too long-winded. It was very improvised, so hopefully that'll get you making maps well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.